Ancient cities were not just built to be seen, they were built to be heard. This is the world of ancient acoustic architecture, a place where sound itself became a structural element. By the end of this journey, you will understand how entire cities were tuned like musical instruments to harness the power of echo. How could a whisper travel over a mile? Why did a simple handclap sound like a sacred bird? We will uncover the lost science that transformed vibrations into a force that shaped rituals, power, and everyday life. What does it mean to live in a world designed for sound? The principles that guided these ancient sound architects began with simple, careful observation. They stood in echoing caves and shouted across deep canyons, listening intently to how the world itself answered back. They discovered that sound behaved differently depending on the shape of the space and the substance of the surfaces it touched. A smooth, curved wall of dense limestone, for instance, could catch a whisper and reflect it back with stunning clarity, while a rough, porous surface would swallow the same sound whole. This was the birth of acoustic engineering, a science of listening. These early builders learned to manipulate sound waves through geometry and material. They realized that by angling two massive parallel walls precisely, they could create a sonic corridor, a channel that would carry a voice over incredible distances without it fading away. Positioning a single opening, like a doorway or window, could act as a filter, allowing only certain frequencies to pass through while blocking others. Even the choice of stone was a deliberate acoustic decision. Granite might be selected for its bright, sharp reflection, while sandstone could be used to create a warmer, softer resonance. The goal was to find and harness resonant frequencies. Think of it like pushing a child on a swing. If you push at just the right moment with the perfect rhythm, the swing goes higher and higher with minimal effort. Ancient architects did the same with sound. They designed chambers and courtyards that naturally amplified the fundamental tones of a chanting human voice or the specific pitch of a sacred flute. A handclap in such a space would not just echo, it would ring, sustained by the room itself, transforming a simple noise into a powerful, layered chord. This knowledge was far more than a construction manual. For these cultures, sound was a tangible bridge to the divine. The right resonance was not just pleasing to the ear. It was thought to please the gods, to harmonize the human world with the cosmic order. A perfectly tuned space made prayer more potent and ritual more real. The very stones were partners in a spiritual conversation. These early experiments, carving sound-shaping structures into the earth, proved that the physical world could be orchestrated. They laid the essential groundwork for an even more ambitious project. The next step was to stop building rooms for sound and to start building entire cities for it. A whisper can defy physics, traveling further than a shout. This is the magic of the Whispering Gallery, a space where sound seems to bend to human will. In St. Paul's Cathedral in London, a person standing on one side of the Great Dome can murmur a secret against the wall, and another person, over 100 feet away on the opposite side, will hear it as clearly as if it were spoken directly into their ear. The sound clings to the curved stone surface, sliding around the vast space without fading into the open air. But this was not a new discovery. The Roman Colosseum, with its massive elliptical bowl, was designed so the voices of gladiators and emperors could reach the highest seats. In Beijing, the Temple of Heaven features the Imperial Vault of Heaven, a circular wall where a word spoken at one end travels smoothly to the other. These structures all share a secret. They use the geometry of curves to create focal points, spots where sound waves are gathered and directed like light through a lens. Ancient engineers shaped these surfaces so that every whisper, every footstep would be channeled along a precise, invisible pathway. How did they achieve this without modern tools? It was a science built on generations of trial and error, of listening and adjusting. A builder might have noticed how a particular archway carried the sound of a stream, and then replicated that curve on a monumental scale. The goal was often to create an aura of power. When a priest's voice could travel a great distance without seeming to grow louder, it felt less like a human effort and more like a divine miracle. It made private communication possible in a crowded temple, or allowed a single leader to address thousands without strain. This mastery of sound within a single room was the critical first step. It proved that architects could build environments where sound obeyed new rules. The next challenge was to take these principles outside, to make the entire city resonate. Deep beneath the island of Malta lies a world carved from solid rock, a maze of chambers known as the Saflieni Hypogeum. This is not a simple tomb or shelter, but a three-level subterranean temple complex thousands of years old, and its silence holds a profound secret. Within this labyrinth is a room that challenges our understanding of the ancient world, the oracle chamber. Here, sound does not simply echo, it transforms. If a man stands in this chamber and chants at a specific low pitch, around 110 cycles per second, something remarkable happens. The sound does not fade away. Instead, it builds upon itself, swelling into a deep, humming resonance that you do not just hear with your ears, you feel it in your bones. The very air seems to thicken with vibration. This is the effect of a standing wave, a phenomenon where sound waves reflecting off the chamber's walls reinforce each other at a perfect, specific frequency. The architects who carved this room from the Globigerina limestone understood its acoustic properties intimately. The shape of the chamber and the density of the rock were meticulously designed to capture the fundamental tone of a male chanting voice and amplify it into an overwhelming physical force. What is truly astonishing is what this frequency does to the human mind. Modern research has shown that sound at 110 Hz can measurably alter brain activity, shifting patterns away from the busy logic of the frontal cortex and towards the more relaxed, meditative states associated with trance. In this engineered space, a simple chant could become a direct key to an altered state of consciousness. The Hypogeum was not an accident, it was a precision instrument. Archaeoacoustics researchers have confirmed that its builders intentionally sculpted the space to control both auditory and psychological effects. Certain niches and doorways act as filters, dampening some sounds while allowing this sacred resonance to ring clear. This was a technology of experience, a way to use architecture to fuse sound with spiritual ceremony. The entire complex was a tool for ritual, designed to guide participants through a powerful sensory journey. This demonstrates a level of sophistication that moves far beyond simple amplification. It reveals a deliberate science of shaping human perception through the built environment. The profound knowledge gained in such enclosed, sacred spaces would not remain underground for long. The same principles that tuned a single chamber would soon be applied under the open sky, orchestrating the sound of entire cities. A pin drop on a stage should be inaudible to a crowd of thousands. Yet in the theater of Epidaurus in Greece, this is exactly what happens. This grand amphitheater, carved into a hillside, possesses an acoustic perfection that modern engineers still struggle to fully replicate. A person sitting in the very top row, over 115 feet away from the stone stage, can hear the rustle of an actor's costume or the soft intake of a breath as clearly as if they were standing just a few feet away. This was not a happy accident. It was the result of a sophisticated understanding of sound, built into the very geometry of the structure. the secret lies in the steep, stepped arrangement of the limestone seats. Each row acts as a perfect acoustic filter. The rough texture and the precise angle of the steps effectively scatter and absorb the low-frequency rumble of the wind and the distant murmur of the crowd. At the same time, the hard, smooth surfaces reflect and channel the higher frequencies of the human voice directly upward. This natural filtration system strips away the distracting background noise and delivers the crisp consonants and clear vowels of speech with astonishing fidelity. The Greeks and Romans perfected these designs through a combination of sacred mathematical ratios and generations of empirical testing. Builders would listen, adjust, and refine the curves of the seating and the proportions of the stage until the sound carried perfectly. This ensured that every political speech, every line of epic poetry, and every note of a musical performance reached every single citizen in the audience, binding them together in a shared cultural and communal experience. But these amphitheaters were not isolated feats of engineering. They were integral components of a much broader urban acoustic strategy. The principles mastered here, the control of reverberation and the precise direction of sound, directly influenced the planning of entire city centers. Agoras and public squares were laid out to facilitate clear communication, turning the city itself into a stage for civic life. The goal was to integrate sound as a fundamental element of public existence, ensuring that the voice of the community could always be heard. This grand vision of an audible city, however, raises a compelling question. If a single theater could be tuned so perfectly, what was possible when an entire civilization decided to build its most sacred city around a single, perfect echo? High above the jungle floor, the steps of El Castillo are not just a staircase to the sky. They are a massive stone instrument waiting for a single note to bring it to life. Stand at the base of this pyramid in Chichen Itza and clap your hands once. The sound that returns is not a simple repetition. It is a sharp, descending chirp, a cascade of sound that perfectly mimics the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. This is no accident of decay or random echo. It is a signature written in sound waves by the pyramid's architects. The effect is born from the pyramid's stark, rhythmic geometry. Each of the 4 staircases is a series of steep, evenly spaced steps. When a sharp impulse like a hand clap strikes this surface, the sound wave does not bounce back as one. Instead, it shatters, reflecting off each individual step at a slightly different moment. These tiny, staggered echoes travel back to your ears not as a single noise, but as a rapid, overlapping sequence. The precise height and depth of each step were calculated so that these micro-echoes would blend together, their frequencies merging to create an entirely new sound, a piercing chirp that seems to fall from the heavens. To the Maya, this was far more than a clever trick. The Quetzal bird was a sacred creature, its vibrant feathers symbolizing the divine. Its call was the voice of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god who descended from the sky. By engineering the pyramid to echo with this sacred sound, the builders made the god's presence tangible. A leader standing at the pyramid's base could, with a simple gesture, summon the voice of the deity, weaving spiritual authority directly into the fabric of public ceremony. This was acoustic engineering in service of myth, a way to make a cultural story physically real for every person in the plaza. It transformed the monumental structure from a silent symbol into an interactive, vocal entity. The pyramid did not just represent the feathered serpent, it spoke with its voice. This mastery of sound on such a grand scale reveals a civilization that thought in multiple dimensions, blending art, science, and spirit into a single, resonant whole. If a single pyramid could be given a voice, what other secrets are waiting in the forgotten plazas and temples of the ancient world? High on the wind-scoured slopes of the Himalayas, sound finds a different kind of home. Here, ancient Tibetan monasteries cling to the mountainsides, not in spite of the harsh environment, but because of it. The architects of these sacred spaces chose their locations with an ear for the landscape itself. They sought out high mountain valleys and deep ravines, natural bowls in the earth that function as colossal amplifiers. When a monk chants in such a place, his voice does not simply fade into the thin air. It is caught by the valley walls, reflected and reinforced until the mantra seems to emanate from the mountain, not from a man. This was a deliberate fusion of the natural and the built world. The monasteries were designed as extensions of the acoustic landscape. Their massive, thick walls, often made from stone and rammed earth, were not just for insulation against the cold. These dense barriers acted as superb reflectors of sound, containing and focusing the sacred frequencies within the ritual spaces. The iconic bell-shaped stupas dotting the compounds are more than symbolic monuments. Their curved forms are perfect for scattering sound waves in a diffuse, enveloping pattern, creating a pervasive sonic atmosphere that washes over everyone present. This was not about making the sound louder in one direction, but about making it omnipresent, a constant, immersive hum that aided deep meditation. The goal was to saturate the environment with vibration. Monks would use these enhanced acoustics to project their chanted mantras across vast distances. They believed the sound waves themselves, physically vibrating through the air, carried their prayers directly to the heavens. In this worldview, architecture was a tool for tuning the entire local universe to a sacred frequency. The monastery, the valley, and the sky became one interconnected resonant system. This represents perhaps the most holistic approach to acoustic architecture ever conceived. It was not about building a room with good acoustics, but about choosing a place where the whole world already had perfect acoustics, and then carefully constructing a building that would harmonize with that existing power. The result was a seamless harmony between human intention and natural phenomenon, a profound demonstration of how sound could bind the spiritual to the physical. If a single monastery could tune a mountain valley, what was possible for an entire civilization that decided to tune a continent? The most ambitious example of all lies in the heart of South America, where an entire city was laid out to resonate with the earth itself. How did they achieve these acoustic miracles without a single oscilloscope or computer model? The answer lies not in lost technology, but in a profound and patient science of observation. Ancient architects were master listeners, studying the world as a grand acoustic laboratory. They stood in echoing caves and noted how a shout returned with clarity. They whispered across canyons and learned how sound could travel vast distances when channeled by natural walls. They tapped different stones and listened to the ring, understanding that material was as important as shape. From these everyday phenomena, they distilled a practical science built on three core principles. The first is reflection, the simple idea that sound bounces off a surface, much like a ball bounces off a wall. A smooth, hard wall of limestone creates a sharp, clear echo. A rough, uneven surface scatters the sound, absorbing it. The second principle is refraction, the way sound waves bend as they pass through different temperatures or around obstacles. You have likely experienced this yourself, hearing voices clearly from around a corner on a cold, still morning. Ancient builders learned to use this bending to their advantage, directing sound in seemingly impossible ways. The third and most powerful concept is resonance. Every material, every enclosed space, has a natural frequency at which it prefers to vibrate. Think of a singer shattering a glass with a single, sustained note. The sound matches the glass's resonant frequency, and the vibration becomes too intense to contain. The oracle chamber in Malta is a perfect example of this. The room was carved to resonate at the specific frequency of a chanting voice, turning a simple tone into a physical force. To control these principles, the architects became experts in geometry and material. They discovered that a parabolic curve, like the inside of a satellite dish, could gather sound waves and focus them on a single point, creating a whispering gallery. They learned that granite reflected sound with a bright, sharp quality, while sandstone produced a warmer, softer echo. This deep, practical knowledge was too valuable to be left to chance. It was woven directly into cultural traditions, encoded in myths, and embedded in the strict building codes passed from master artisans to their apprentices. The precise proportions of a Greek theater or the exact angle of a Mayan staircase were not merely aesthetic choices. They were the recorded results of generations of acoustic experimentation, a living library of sound. This empirical engineering, refined over centuries, allowed them to compose with stone. They were not just building structures, they were tuning instruments on a colossal scale, setting the stage for the ultimate expression of this ancient science, the acoustically planned city. The city itself became a musical instrument. In ancient urban centers like Teotihuacan, the so-called Avenue of the Dead was far more than a ceremonial pathway. Its sheer scale, a massive corridor flanked by towering temple platforms, created a perfect acoustic channel. A voice projected from the pyramid of the sun would not simply dissipate into the open air. Instead, the sound waves would be caught by the long, parallel walls of the avenue, funneled forward with remarkable clarity for over a mile. This was not an afterthought. It was a deliberate design, an urban-scale version of the Whispering Gallery. The building facades along such avenues were not just decorative. Their smooth, plastered surfaces acted as massive sounding boards, reflecting and projecting sound rather than absorbing it. Open plazas, strategically placed at the intersections of these grand streets, served as natural amphitheaters. They were the city's public address system. When a leader spoke from a central platform, their words would be carried by the architecture, reaching thousands of citizens gathered in the surrounding space. This was acoustic planning on a staggering scale. The entire urban layout was a tool for social cohesion and control. In ancient Rome, the specific arrangement of the forum, with its basilicas and rostra, was engineered to manage the sound of civic life. The hard marble surfaces ensured that the speeches of senators and orators would carry, while the spatial organization prevented chaotic noise from overwhelming the crucial messages of state. This holistic approach meant that sound was not left to chance. It was structured, managed, and integrated into the daily experience of every citizen. The sonic city ensured that the voices of power, ritual, and community could always rise above the general murmur of urban life. It transformed random noise into ordered communication. But this raises a deeper question. If a city could be designed to carry the human voice, could it also be designed to listen? Could the stones themselves be arranged to hear what was happening within them? The stones of Machu Picchu were not just placed, they were positioned to listen. High in the Andes, this ancient city is a masterpiece of acoustic integration, where the built and natural environments form a single, resonant instrument. The Temple of the Sun provides a perfect example. Its curved, semicircular wall and carefully carved niches do not simply create an echo. They create a specific, layered reverberation. A chant offered in this space would not just bounce back, it would return transformed, enriched by the stone itself, making a solitary voice sound like a small chorus. This was likely no accident, but a deliberate feature for ceremonies meant to connect with the sun god in Tai, where the very quality of sound could elevate a ritual. But the genius of Machu Picchu's acoustics extends far beyond its walls. The Incas chose this saddle-shaped ridge for a reason. The surrounding peaks and deep ravines act as a colossal natural amphitheater. A single blow on a pututu, a conch shell trumpet, would have its sound waves captured by the bowl of the mountains, amplified and carried clearly across the entire urban sector. This allowed for communication over impressive distances without a single runner. Research has revealed that key structures are aligned along these natural sound paths. A guard stationed at the watchman's hut could likely hear a signal from the Temple of the Sun, with the sound channeled efficiently by the landscape's contours. This was an auditory network, a city that could speak to itself. The Incas' legendary stone masonry was the final, crucial element. Their ability to cut and fit granite blocks with such precision that not even a knife blade can slip between them created immense, seamless surfaces. These walls became superb sound mirrors, reflecting calls and commands with minimal distortion. They were polishing the natural amplifier that the mountains provided. Every aspect of the city, from the grand temples to the agricultural terraces, was woven into this sonic tapestry. Functionality and spirituality became one. The practical need for communication seamlessly merged with the ceremonial desire to make human activity resonate with the power of the sacred landscape. Machu Picchu stands as a testament to a civilization that heard the music of the world and built their city to sing along. If an entire city could be tuned to its environment, what happened when that delicate balance was lost? What becomes of a world that falls silent? The great hypostyle hall of Karnak is a forest of stone. 134 colossal columns stand in tight formation, their surfaces carved deep with the histories of gods and pharaohs. In such a space, you would expect a whisper to be swallowed by the sheer mass of rock. Yet when a chant begins here, something remarkable occurs. The sound does not die. It lingers, weaving through the pillars, building in layers until the air itself seems to thrum with a palpable energy. This was not a byproduct of construction. It was its entire purpose. The Egyptians were masters of sustained sound, engineering their temples to hold ritual noise within their stone grasp for as long as possible. They understood that a fading chant was merely a human effort, but a chant that swelled and persisted within an enclosed space became the enduring voice of the divine. The design was meticulously calculated. The tight spacing of the columns and the massive, flat stone ceilings created a complex reverberation chamber. Sound waves would bounce between the hard surfaces, their energy dissipating slowly over many seconds. A single note from a priest's sistrum rattle or a deep vocal tone would be transformed into a rich, overlapping chord, a sonic texture so thick you could almost feel its weight. This sustained resonance was believed to be the very mechanism that invoked the presence of the gods. It was thought to tear the veil between the mortal world and the eternal, making the temple not just a house for the divine, but a conduit for its manifestation. The architecture itself was an act of prayer, but the control did not stop with simple reverberation. Look closer at the walls, at the intricate hieroglyphs. Their precise, deep carving may have served a dual purpose. Beyond their sacred texts, these countless indentations could have acted as a sophisticated system of acoustic diffraction gratings. Instead of sound reflecting off a flat, boring wall in one simple wave, it would be scattered by the complex texture of the carving. This would prevent harsh, focused echoes and instead create a more diffuse, enveloping soundscape, making the divine presence feel not like a voice from a single direction, but an atmosphere that filled the entire hall. Modern acoustic studies have confirmed the genius of this design. Researchers have detected distinct resonant frequencies within these temples, specific pitches at which the stone itself seems to sing. Astonishingly, these frequencies align perfectly with the traditional scales of Egyptian music. The very chambers were tuned like the strings of an immense instrument, calibrated to amplify the specific tones used in their most sacred ceremonies. A chant offered at the correct pitch would find the room joining in, reinforcing the sound and unlocking its full spiritual power. This was the ultimate integration of sound and structure. It reinforced a strict religious hierarchy, as only the initiated priests would know the precise chants and locations to activate this sonic power. For the average citizen, the overwhelming auditory experience from the temple's interior, spilling out into the city, was a constant reminder of the priest's unique connection to the gods. The sacred soundscape of Karnak and Luxor was a tool of both wonder and control, proving that in the ancient world, the power to shape sound was synonymous with the power to shape belief. This mastery of sound within enclosed temples represents one end of the acoustic spectrum. But what happens when this knowledge is applied to the vast, open landscape, to the very ground beneath our feet? The stones themselves had to sing. Ancient architects understood that the voice of a building was determined as much by its substance as by its shape. A structure carved from limestone, like those in the Mediterranean or at Mayan sites, possesses a unique sonic character. Its slightly porous nature gently absorbs the lower, rumbling frequencies, while its hard, crystalline structure reflects the higher pitches of the human voice with brilliant clarity. This natural filtering is why a whisper can travel so far and remain so intelligible in a limestone corridor. It strips away the muddiness, leaving only the crisp essence of the sound. In contrast, the granite favored by Inca masons is far denser. This stone acts less like a filter and more like a perfect mirror for sound. It reflects almost every frequency with equal force, creating sharp, powerful echoes that bounce through a space with minimal loss of energy. The choice was never random. A builder selecting granite for a temple platform wanted declarations to ring with authority. A craftsman shaping a limestone prayer chamber sought to clarify and purify the spoken word. This material science extended far beyond the raw stone. Ancient artisans became master tuners, applying finishes and inserts to modify a wall's acoustic behavior. A smooth plaster coating, like that used on the walls of Teotihuacan, could transform a rough, sound-absorbing stone surface into a flawless reflective plane, projecting sound across vast plazas. There is compelling evidence that metal was sometimes integrated into the construction, with bronze plates or lead inserts placed at key points to alter the resonant frequency of a wall, much like the tuning pegs on a guitar. These were not decorative afterthoughts. They were critical adjustments, fine-tuning the resonance of a space until it perfectly amplified the desired chant or musical note. This knowledge was honed over centuries, passed down through generations of artisans. A master builder would tap a block of quarried stone, listening to its ring just as a musician listens to a piece of wood before carving it into a violin. They were selecting for sonic properties with the same care they applied to structural strength and visual beauty. The result was a refined craft where every material decision served a dual purpose. The wall had to stand the test of time, and it had to sing with the right voice for the rituals it would host. This deep, practical mastery of material acoustics represents a forgotten layer of technological sophistication. It proves that these ancient builders were not just stacking rocks. They were composing with the very substance of the earth, creating a resonant world that was both heard and felt by everyone within it. A leader's voice could become the voice of a god. In the ancient world, the power to control sound was a direct extension of political and religious authority. When a priest-king stood atop a Mesopotamian ziggurat, his chants and declarations were not just spoken into the air. The massive, stepped platform acted as a colossal sounding board, catching his words and hurling them across the city below. To the people gathered in the plaza, this was not a man straining to be heard. It was a disembodied voice raining down from the heavens, an omnipresent command that felt both everywhere and nowhere at once. This was acoustic engineering as political theater. The very design of these structures created a fundamental inequality in who could be heard. The ruler, amplified by architecture, could address thousands. The individual in the crowd had a voice that died within a few feet. This sonic division reinforced a social hierarchy as effectively as any law or wall. The psychological effect was profound. A voice that seemed to emanate from the stones themselves carried an undeniable weight of permanence and divine right. It could awe a population into reverence and subdue dissent before a single word of threat was uttered. In ancient Egypt, the tightly controlled acoustics of the temple ensured that only the pharaoh and his high priests could activate the resonant frequencies that invoked the gods. This monopoly on sacred sound cemented their status as the sole intermediaries between the people and the divine. It was a form of sonic governance where the management of reverberation and echo was as crucial to maintaining order as the management of grain or water. The goal was a uniform experience, a proclamation heard with the same clarity and force by every citizen, from the front of the crowd to the very back, created a unified message and a shared reality. This auditory control prevented the chaos of competing narratives and fragmented understanding. In this way, the stones of the city were not passive observers. They were active participants in a system of power, instruments tuned to broadcast the voice of authority and to silence the noise of the individual. This reveals the ultimate purpose of this ancient science. It was never just about the physics of sound. It was about the physics of society. Sound was the thread that wove the human and divine worlds together. In countless ancient cultures, audible vibration was not merely a physical phenomenon. It was a sacred technology, a direct line to the gods. The very act of chanting, of drumming, of ringing a bell was a form of prayer made manifest in the air. And the architects of these societies built environments to amplify that connection, designing structures where sound could induce collective trances and profound spiritual experiences. Think of the massive, looming stones of Stonehenge. While its celestial alignments are famous, its acoustic properties are equally deliberate. The circular arrangement of the great sarsen stones creates a contained, resonant space. Within that ring, the rhythmic pounding of drums or the low, resonant chanting of priests would not simply be heard. The sound would be trapped, circling the participants, its repetitive waves washing over them, blurring the line between individual consciousness and a unified, transcendent state. This was not an accidental side effect. It was the entire point. The environment was engineered to guide the mind away from the mundane and toward the mystical. Similarly, the oracle chambers of Greece, like the one at Delphi, were not chosen for their scenic views alone. They were often located near fissures in the earth that emitted mild, intoxicating gases. But the acoustics of the chamber itself played a crucial role. The peculiar echoes and reverberations in that confined space would distort the voice of the Pythia, the priestess, making her prophecies sound otherworldly, as if the words were not her own but were spoken through her by the god Apollo. The architecture transformed a human utterance into a divine message. This spiritual acoustic engineering aimed to do more than just make sounds louder. It sought to transform physical space into a portal, a liminal zone where the veil between worlds was thin. The deliberate tuning of entire cities to specific frequencies often had deep cosmological significance. Urban layouts were aligned with the perceived harmonic order of the universe, a concept sometimes called the music of the spheres. The precise proportions of a temple, the specific length of a ceremonial avenue, the chosen resonant frequency of a prayer chamber, all were echoes of a greater cosmic pattern. Building a city to resonate at a certain pitch was a way of grounding that celestial harmony on earth, of making the human realm a physical reflection of the divine order. This fusion of acoustics and spirituality was not a minor feature of ancient life. It was the very foundation upon which their understanding of reality was built, proving that the power of an echo could reach all the way to the heavens. We can now listen to the stones with tools our ancestors never dreamed of. Archaeoacoustics, a field merging archaeology and sound science, is using sophisticated technology to map the silent songs of ancient sites. Researchers employ three-dimensional laser scanning to create perfect digital replicas of a chamber or an entire plaza. They then use acoustic modeling software to simulate how sound waves would have traveled, bounced, and resonated within these virtual spaces. This process is like giving the ruins a voice again, allowing us to hear them as they were meant to be heard. At the Saflieni Hypogeum, these digital models confirmed that the oracle chamber's powerful resonance was not a lucky fluke. The room's dimensions and the specific density of the limestone were calculated to amplify that life-altering frequency of 110 Hz. At Chichen Itza, sound impulse tests, essentially digital handclaps, proved that the Quetzal bird echo was a predictable, reproducible effect of the pyramid's exact stair geometry. This data transforms speculation into evidence, revealing a blueprint of acoustic intention carved into the very stone. The science goes even deeper with spectral analysis, which breaks down the complex sound of a space into its individual frequency components. This is how researchers discovered that the Great Temple at Karnak is tuned to the fundamental scales of ancient Egyptian music. The stones themselves have a preferred pitch, and the ceremonies were composed to match it. These findings are more than just technical validations. They are cultural translations. By decoding the acoustic code of a building, we begin to understand the rituals it hosted. A long, sustained reverberation time points to meditative, trance-inducing ceremonies. A sharp, clear echo with little resonance suggests a space designed for the precise delivery of spoken declarations or complex music. This scientific lens bridges a vast gap in our understanding. It proves that the manipulation of sound was a deliberate, advanced science, a core pillar of architectural design that shaped human experience for thousands of years. The whispers of the past are now being amplified by the tools of the present. The numbers were always there, hidden in the stone. Ancient architects understood that to build for sound, they had to build with mathematics. The perfect echo was not a matter of chance, it was a matter of ratio. They discovered that certain mathematical relationships, when translated into physical dimensions, could make a space sing. The golden ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1, was one of their most powerful tools. This proportion appears throughout nature, from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. Builders observed this inherent harmony and replicated it in their designs. A room whose length was 1.618 times its width would not only be pleasing to the eye, it would possess a natural, balanced resonance. Sound waves reflecting within such a space would reinforce each other in a coherent, musical way, rather than clashing into a chaotic reverberation. This was the secret behind the acoustic perfection of the Greek theaters. The precise curvature of the seating and the exact proportions of the stage orchestra were calculated using these harmonic principles. The result was an even distribution of sound, ensuring that every audience member, regardless of their seat, received the performance with the same clarity. This mathematical foresight prevented dead spots where sound would cancel out and loud spots where it would become distorted. It was a geometric solution to an auditory problem. The same intellectual rigor is evident in the pyramids of the Maya and the temples of Egypt. The height of a chamber, the width of a doorway, and the spacing between massive columns all followed numerical patterns that aligned with the fundamental intervals of their musical scales. An octave, for instance, is a simple 2-to-1 ratio. A perfect fifth is a 3-to-2 ratio. These builders were essentially constructing massive, solid-state musical instruments, tuned to the same intervals a musician would use. The structure itself was designed to resonate at these specific, harmonious frequencies. This reveals a profound theoretical foundation. The beauty of the form, the function of the space, and the harmony of the sound were not separate considerations. They were three expressions of a single, universal principle. The mathematical code embedded in the architecture proves that these acoustic wonders were not mystical accidents. They were the product of intense observation, intellectual rigor, and a deep desire to weave human creation into the very fabric of a harmonious cosmos. The landscape itself became a conscious instrument. Ancient planners did not just build within the environment, they sculpted it for sound, a practice we might call acoustic landscaping. This went far beyond placing a temple in a nice valley. It involved the deliberate modification of the earth to enhance and control the auditory experience. They would reshape hillsides into smooth, curved bowls to act as natural amphitheaters, focusing sound toward a specific gathering point. They diverted water channels not only for irrigation but to use the steady, rhythmic sound of flowing water as a constant, calming background drone that masked irregular noise. Even the choice of vegetation was an acoustic decision. Planting dense groves of trees around a sacred site could create a living sound barrier, absorbing the chaotic winds and distant clamor, while leaving the central ceremonial space clear and sonically pristine. This created a seamless transition from the wild sounds of nature to the orchestrated sounds of ritual. The Great Nazca Lines in Peru are a profound enigma. They're massive geoglyphs of animals and geometric shapes best seen from the air. Yet their function may have been as much about sound as sight. The long, deep trenches and wide lines carved into the desert plateau could have acted as giant sound channels. A person walking along the length of a line or standing at a key intersection might have experienced a unique acoustic phenomenon, where the wind humming across the precise grooves created a specific tone, or where a spoken prayer was guided along the earthen pathway. Similarly, the vast man-made hills and winding earthworks of ancient Britain, like Silbury Hill, may have served as resonant mounds. Their massive earthen forms, covered in grass, would have reflected sound in a soft, diffuse manner, very different from the sharp echo of stone, creating a distinct sonic signature for ceremonies held on their summits or in their adjacent ditches. This holistic approach meant there was no true boundary between the building and the world around it. The entire terrain was part of the acoustic structure. A processional path was not just a physical route, it was a curated sonic journey, moving a participant from the quiet of a sheltered grove across a resonating plain and into the thrumming heart of a stone temple. This fusion of the natural and the built environment allowed for the creation of immersive sonic habitats on a scale we can scarcely comprehend today. The whole world, from the planted field to the terraced mountain, was tuned to be heard. This grand vision of a planet consciously shaped for sound forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about ancient technology. If they could tune a continent, what other sensory realities did they engineer that we have simply forgotten how to perceive? The principles that shaped ancient cities now resonate in our modern world. The quest for perfect sound did not end with the last stone laid at Machu Picchu or the final chant in the Hypogeum. It simply evolved. Today, architects and engineers look back to these ancient marvels, not for mystical secrets, but for sustainable, time-tested solutions to our own noisy existence. The design of a world-class concert hall, for instance, is a direct descendant of the Greek amphitheater. The goal remains the same, to carry a delicate musical note to every listener with pristine clarity. Modern acoustic engineers use computer models to simulate sound waves, but the fundamental geometry they rely on, the use of parabolic curves to focus sound and stepped surfaces to filter unwanted noise, was mastered thousands of years ago by builders who had only their ears as guides. This is not mere imitation. It is the rediscovery of a forgotten science. Ancient sites teach us about passive amplification, using a structure's own form to project sound without a single watt of electricity. They demonstrate how strategic building placement and the use of natural wind barriers can create pockets of quiet in a bustling urban center, a technique now employed in city planning to mitigate traffic noise. The choice of building materials has also come full circle. Just as the Maya selected limestone for its bright acoustic reflection, modern designers are rediscovering the sonic benefits of natural stone and plaster, moving away from sound-deadening synthetic panels to create more vibrant, resonant spaces. The ancient understanding that a space should feel alive with sound is returning. We see this in libraries designed with subtle reverberation to make them feel less sterile, and in hospitals that use resonant materials to create a more calming auditory environment for healing. This legacy proves that the best acoustic design is a seamless blend of art and science, meant to serve human well-being. It reminds us that before we had decibel meters and audio software, we had a profound intuitive understanding of how sound shapes our lives. The ancient architects were not just building for the gods, they were building for the human ear, the human heart, and the human mind. Their greatest lesson is that a space is not truly built until it has been given its voice. A whisper cannot travel a mile without help. Many popular stories about ancient acoustic wonders stretch the truth, suggesting a level of control that verges on the magical. Take the idea of entire cities communicating through whispering walls. While a long, straight avenue like the one in Teotihuacan did channel sound, the reality was far more complex. On a perfectly still day, with no one else in the city, a shout might indeed carry a great distance, but fill that same avenue with the ambient noise of a living metropolis, with people talking, animals moving, and craftsmen working, and that same shout would be swallowed by the din. The natural topography, the shape of the surrounding hills, played as much of a role as the man-made walls. This does not diminish the achievement, it refines it. The ancient builders were geniuses at leveraging their environment, not defying physics. They placed their cities where the land itself would help them, using natural sound channels and then enhancing them with precise construction. Another common misconception involves the purpose of these acoustic effects. Not every perfect echo was meant for secret communication between priests. Some were simply a beautiful byproduct of sacred geometry, an emergent property of building with harmonious ratios. The sound was a signature of the structure's mathematical perfection, a feature that was then incorporated into ritual rather than being the sole reason for the design. Rigorous archaeological and acoustic analysis helps us separate the deliberate from the coincidental. By using sound impulse testing and three-dimensional modeling, researchers can determine if an echo was a predictable result of the architecture or a happy accident of decay and ruin. This critical perspective is not about spoiling the mystery. It is about deepening our respect, understanding that these builders worked with the real world, with its noise and its limitations, makes their accomplishments even more remarkable. They did not have supernatural powers. They had patience, observation, and a profound understanding of the materials and the world around them. By clearing away the myths of omnipotent sound, we can finally hear the true genius echoing through the stones, a testament to human ingenuity that is more impressive than any fantasy. The very stones could reach into the human mind. These ancient acoustic environments were powerful psychological tools, carefully engineered to evoke specific emotional and cognitive states. A long, lingering reverberation in a temple chamber did more than just make a chant sound impressive. It created a palpable sense of awe, even fear, as if the space itself were alive and breathing. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, dissolving the individual's sense of self and replacing it with a feeling of being part of something immense and eternal. This was the architecture of emotion, a deliberate manipulation of the human psyche through vibration. In stark contrast, the crisp, clear acoustics of a Greek theater or a public forum were designed to do the opposite. When every syllable of a political speech or line of poetry arrived with perfect clarity, it fostered a sense of trust and direct connection. The audience could focus entirely on the message, undistracted by muddled echoes, which enhanced collective attention and made the shared experience more persuasive and unifying. This acoustic clarity was not just about audibility, it was about forging social cohesion. Modern environmental psychology helps us decode this ancient wisdom. Studies confirm that the sonic character of a space directly influences our behavior and mental state. Prolonged exposure to a highly reverberant, resonant environment can lead to feelings of disorientation and heightened suggestibility, a perfect condition for immersive ritual. The low-frequency resonance found in sites like the Hypogeum in Malta, for example, is now known to have a direct biological impact. Sound at that specific pitch, around 110 Hz, has been shown in studies to shift brainwave activity. It quietens the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain associated with linear logic and self-monitoring, and allows for more right brain activity, linked to creativity, intuition, and trance-like states. In such a space, a simple, rhythmic chant could effortlessly guide an entire group into a shared meditative or ecstatic state. The architecture was not just setting a mood. It was actively altering consciousness. This understanding reveals the true genius behind the immense effort of acoustic tuning. It was never just about physics or even aesthetics. It was about human experience. An architect shaping a ceremonial chamber was, in effect, composing an emotional journey for its occupants. The goal was to use sound to bypass conscious thought and speak directly to the subconscious, to the deepest parts of our being where wonder, reverence, and belief are born. By designing spaces that could induce awe, focus attention, or facilitate trance, these ancient builders gained a profound level of influence over ritual, social order, and spiritual life. The power of an echo was not just in its sound, but in its silent grip on the human soul. This mastery of the mind through the built environment represents a sophisticated technology of consciousness, one that we are only just beginning to appreciate. This acoustic intelligence was not reserved for gods and rulers alone. It echoed through the bustling marketplaces and quiet courtyards of everyday life. In the residential quarters of ancient cities, the common home was a carefully considered acoustic space. Builders used thick, shared walls between houses not just for structural support, but to dampen the sounds of neighboring families. Inner courtyards were strategically placed to act as sonic buffers, capturing and containing the lively noise of children playing or domestic work, preventing it from spilling out into the narrow streets and preserving a sense of privacy for the entire community. This was acoustic planning on a human scale, aimed at managing the constant sound of dense urban living. Water was another masterful tool in this everyday sonic orchestra. The gentle, consistent murmur of a public fountain was far more than a source of fresh water. It was a form of ancient noise cancellation. Placed at a key intersection or in a central plaza, the fountain's sound would effectively mask the more jarring and unpredictable noises of the city. The clatter of cartwheels on stone, the raised voices of arguments, the clamor of workshops. This created pockets of aural comfort, transforming chaotic public spaces into more serene environments for conversation and commerce. Even the water channels that fed these fountains were part of the design, their steady flow providing a constant, calming backdrop. This attention to the mundane sounds of existence reveals a profound truth. The ancient urban planner sought not just grandeur but harmony. The goal was a balanced soundscape where the sacred could resonate without being drowned out by the secular, and where daily life could proceed without descending into an overwhelming cacophony. The same principles that directed a chant across a mile-long avenue were applied to ensure a family could enjoy a meal in relative peace. This seamless integration of acoustic design into every facet of the city, from the monumental to the mundane, created a living environment that was not only functional but psychologically nurturing. It was a world built for the human ear in all its complexity. This profound understanding of sound was too vital to be written down in simple manuals. It flowed through generations in the hushed conversations between master and apprentice, a living knowledge passed from one pair of trained ears to the next. A young builder would not learn the perfect curve for a whispering gallery from a diagram. He would learn it by listening, by standing beside his teacher as the master tapped a stone wall and explained the subtle difference in its ring. This was a craft of the hands and the ears embedded in a deep oral tradition. The great building guilds of the ancient world became the guardians of this acoustic science. They wrapped it in the language of sacred geometry, encoding the ideal proportions for a resonant chamber within the precise ratios of a cosmic diagram. To an outsider, these were spiritual symbols. To an initiate, they were acoustic blueprints, ensuring that the critical dimensions for perfect sound were preserved and replicated with every new temple or theater they constructed. This knowledge was a form of power, and the guilds protected it fiercely. Yet this chain of transmission was incredibly fragile. When a civilization fell into decline, when its cities were abandoned and its guilds disbanded, this intricate understanding of sonic space often evaporated within a few generations. The stones remained, but the reason for their specific curves and angles became a mystery. The acoustic genius of the Hypogeum was forgotten for millennia. The mathematical code behind the Greek theaters was lost, their perfect acoustics later attributed to myth or luck. This pattern of loss and rediscovery reveals a sobering truth. Specialized knowledge, no matter how advanced, is a flickering flame that needs careful tending. The slow, patient work of modern archaeoacoustics is in many ways an attempt to rekindle that flame. By combining archaeology with sound science, researchers are effectively relearning the language of the ancient builders, translating the silent testimony of stone back into a science of resonance. This journey underscores the immense value of preserving indigenous and historical building traditions that still hold echoes of this old wisdom. It is a powerful reminder that our ancestors possessed a sophisticated science of the senses, a legacy written not on parchment, but in the very shape of the world they built. A crumbling wall does not just lose its physical form, it loses its voice. This is the fundamental challenge facing researchers in archaeoacoustics today. The very sites they study are often in a state of decay, where centuries of erosion, earthquake damage, and human intervention have irrevocably altered their acoustic properties. A single crack in a once seamless stone wall can scatter a sound wave that was meant to travel in a straight line. The original plaster that turned a rough surface into a perfect sound mirror has often flaked away, leaving behind a porous, absorbent stone that muffles the echoes of the past. We are often trying to hear a song played on an instrument that is broken. Beyond the slow decay of time, modern development has created a new layer of noise. The original sonic landscape of a place like Teotihuacan was not just its architecture. It was the sound of the wind across an open plain, the quiet of a world without engines. Today, the distant hum of a highway or the roar of a jet overhead can completely drown out the subtle acoustic effects that ancient builders worked so hard to create. We are trying to listen for a whisper in a thunderstorm. The most profound challenge, however, is the silence of the written record. We have no ancient engineering textbook titled The Art of Sonic Architecture. The knowledge was passed down through hands and ears, not through written manuals. This means we are left to reverse engineer their intentions from the stones alone, a process that requires a unique collaboration. An archaeologist can date a structure and understand its cultural context. An acoustician can measure its reverberation time and resonant frequencies. An anthropologist can interpret myths and rituals that might hint at the importance of sound. Only when these disciplines speak to each other can a fuller picture emerge. For instance, knowing that a culture revered a specific bird call gives meaning to the discovery of an echo that mimics that exact sound. This difficult, exhilarating work is a form of detective story where the clues are echoes and the suspects are long gone. Overcoming these hurdles is not just an academic exercise. It is essential if we are to truly appreciate the depth of ancient life. We must piece together the original sonic environment to understand how sound was not just an addition to their cities, but a thread woven directly into the fabric of their daily existence, their power structures, and their connection to the cosmos. We are on the verge of stepping directly into the ancient world. The next frontier for Archaeoacoustics is not just about measuring echoes, but about experiencing them. Researchers are now using virtual reality to build fully immersive simulations of these lost cities. Imagine putting on a headset and not only seeing the Grand Plaza of Teotihuacan restored to its original glory, but hearing it as well. You could stand where a priest once stood, chant the same tone, and hear with your own ears how the sound traveled down the Avenue of the Dead, transformed by the very architecture your digital feet are standing on. This technology allows for unprecedented experimentation. What happens if we change the material of this wall from plastered limestone to rough granite in the simulation? How does the soundscape shift when we digitally populate the city with 10,000 people? These virtual time machines will let us test hypotheses in ways that are impossible with crumbling ruins, revealing the precise auditory intentions of the architects. This technological leap is being matched by a vital human one. The most profound insights may not come from a laser scanner, but from the living memory of descendant communities. As researchers increasingly collaborate with local elders and cultural practitioners, they are gaining access to oral histories that have been passed down for generations. A story about a specific echo being the voice of an ancestor, or a song that was only sung in one particular courtyard, can provide the crucial cultural context that turns an acoustic measurement into an understood ritual. These partnerships are transforming the field, ensuring that the interpretation of these sonic spaces is guided by the people whose heritage they represent. The most exciting possibility lies in the data itself. As our computational power grows, we may begin to see patterns we have previously missed. We could analyze the entire urban layout of a city like Machu Picchu or Caracol as a single, complex acoustic algorithm. The arrangement of every building, the angle of every street, the placement of every water channel might be part of a grand, coded composition meant to orchestrate the daily life of the city. We might discover that these layouts were designed to create zones of quiet, corridors of communication, and resonant hubs for ceremony, all working in harmony. This ongoing exploration is far from over. Each new discovery peels back another layer, revealing that the relationship between sound and stone was even more profound and intricate than we ever suspected. The day sound became structure was not a single moment in history, but a continuous thread in the human story, one we are only just beginning to hear clearly again. Our journey through these echoing corridors reveals a universal human truth. Across continents and cultures, from Europe's whispering domes to Egypt's resonant temples and the sonic cities of the Americas, people shared a common drive. They sought to weave sound directly into the fabric of their world. This was not a series of isolated marvels, but a collective endeavor to master the physics of vibration, transforming echo into a tangible power. These structures stand as monuments to a sophisticated science that blended mathematics with an intuitive grasp of the human mind. The precise geometry of a Greek theater, the tuned resonance of a Mayan pyramid, and the immersive reverberation of an Egyptian temple all served a profound purpose. They enhanced communication, deepened spiritual experience, and brought harmony to the clamor of daily life. This ancient wisdom offers a powerful legacy for our own time. In our modern world, filled with chaotic noise and sterile, sound-deadening spaces, we have much to learn. What if our architects and city planners looked to these principles? We could design concert halls with the natural clarity of an ancient amphitheater, create urban plazas that foster clear communication, and build homes that provide both sonic comfort and connection. The goal is not to replicate the past, but to rediscover its core insight that the spaces we inhabit should not just be seen, but heard and felt. They should resonate with human need. The acoustic mysteries of the ancient world invite us to listen more closely to our own environment. What sounds have we designed out of our lives, and what have we lost in the silence? Share your thoughts on these echoing wonders in the comments below, and join us as we continue to uncover the hidden histories that shape our